This is episode 735 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Wally, man, these are the most frustrating stories here. Although, I'm sure there's champagne corks being popped in Santa Fe. Why am I frustrated while they're popping corks in Santa Fe? Well, because New Mexico is now, according to the latest numbers from the Legislative Finance Committee, sitting on a positively mind-numbing $64 billion. That is according to Dan Boyd of the Albuquerque Journal, August 13th, 2025. The kicker is that I went into the not so way back machine and found the Albuquerque Journal headline from Megan Gleason on January 3rd, 2025. New Mexico kicks off 2025 with $58 billion in assets. So you do a little math and you figure out that, well, in about 7 months and some change, the state has accumulated $6 billion in its permanent fund. Wow. I have a lot more to say about this, but I'll hand you the opportunity to say some more.
Yeah, it is. It is borderline mind-boggling how much money we have sitting on the sidelines. And I was thinking about this, Paul. So you know, New Mexico is quote unquote a poor state. A lot how some very controlled dictator oriented economies are very poor states. There's a lot of capital and a lot of funds at the top, but it doesn't spread down into the citizenry. So yeah, we'll see what we're going to do with this. But right now, it just doesn't look like this is even an issue. We're just going to, I mean, what are the odds of them even doing something to address this in the special session coming up or in the legislative session this next year? I would say pretty good chance they will do nothing.
Pretty good. I'm going to go with a 100% chance they will do nothing of substance to use that money for the betterment of our citizenry. They probably will spend something. Obviously, the cost of the special session are non-trivial, although within the realm of a $64 billion revenue, not surplus, but permanent fund, sovereign wealth fund that we have, it is trivial. And I'm not saying that we should spend all of it. We could even not spend a dime of this permanent fund and do dramatic tax reductions, etc. But will they do it in Santa Fe? Not this current group in Santa Fe. They are philosophically unable to. It is like putting a horse with blinders on. They will simply not be able to comprehend or focus on the idea of substantive tax reduction. And I think partially it's because they do not want to get New Mexico into an economic boom where people are more reliant on the private sector. So, of course, over the time of Michelle Lujan Grisham, we've seen a 70% growth in spending in the general fund. I don't, Deb Holland wants to spend even more. She said that on her Twitter account. I don't think the government, legislators, the governor, I think they probably hear back from folks at the agencies. We've got enough money. We just need to find people to do the jobs, or we need some other jobs to do because, quite frankly, the capacity of government to grow is constrained to an extent. So it is, of course, worth noting that recent headlines, and I'll just go through a few of them. Health spending has gone quite a bit up, and this is June 25th, 2025, Source New Mexico. New Mexicans' health outcomes failed to improve despite massive spending increases. We know education spending has gone up dramatically and results have not kept pace. And of course, we're not spending money much on roads and infrastructure that could and should be spent. And don't get me started on water. I would love to see some water infrastructure, or at least developing energy resources, aka nuclear, to process some of the produced water that comes out of the ground. But that's been, even though the governor is actually, I think, pretty close to right on that issue, you got to treat that water, and that takes technology and energy. And it's just been the radical environmental groups don't want that to happen because it would only lock in the importance of oil and gas in a more direct way. So, yeah, we're seeing massive growth in the money that New Mexico has available to us. I should note that the New York Times magazine had an article recently, or not an article, front page story recently. The headline was, "In one of the country's poorest states, crippling budget cuts loom." And then it talks about healthcare, food, outdoor recreation, wildfire protection, the arts. President Trump's new domestic policy law, aka the Big Beautiful Bill, will have wide-ranging effects in New Mexico, which depends heavily on federal funding. Now, how can you find a New York Times, well, any national media outlet article that you can tell they either cursorily spent time in New Mexico or they didn't talk to anybody outside of that 3x5 card of official public opinion? This is a great example because, even George Munoz, Senate Finance Committee chair, will gladly tell people, and I don't have the time or the money or the inclination to buy a New York Times subscription and read this article. So I am basing this entirely on the headline because I don't want to give the New York Times a nickel of my money. How's that? So, but they don't have to talk to me. They should talk to me. They would get a much different perspective, but they won't even talk to George Munoz, who says we are not a poor state. But it's hard to call us poor when you're sitting on $64 billion.
Well, and Paul, what is the state? Let me just
Yes.
back up a little. The term sovereign is a very interesting term. And in this case, when you said sovereign wealth fund, I think you meant it in this sense that a state that it's independent, not subject to outside control, meaning the state of New Mexico controls that. But what's interesting about the word sovereign, which is in under the category of Freudian slips when we name things in New Mexico, is that it's a ruler or state with supreme power. And so, the state of New Mexico has a lot of money and a lot of power, and they just do nothing with it. You know what I mean? They make things worse. And we heard for years, well, if we just had more money, we could solve this problem and that problem. Now we don't even have excuses. We just we lack the will, we lack the imagination, we lack the I don't know, the foresight to solve any of New Mexico's problems, and the money just keeps building up. In and of itself, is that a bad thing? Building up money, it's certainly in this case not the huge positive it's portrayed to be, but it's like that money is there. We can return that to the taxpayers. We can do investments in things that make sense from a government point of view, but we just wring our hands and go along. And Paul, have a feeling that 6-9 months from now, we'll see that it's it's getting close to $80 billion. Who knows?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I've come full circle. At one point, when I was just getting started at Rio Grande Foundation, I heard a lot of,
back when you had that big afro.
Yes, all of my hair. I'm not sure if
that's a cheap ball joke. I apologize.
I'm not sure if it's my daughters or if it's the politicians of New Mexico. But I heard, well, we've got to keep the permanent funds. We've got to preserve them. And I had to do some research and figure it all out. And of course, John Arthur Smith, who was fine. He was a big proponent of keeping those permanent funds uh, flush and growing them, not tapping into them for pre-K. Look, the argument was pre-K is not going to be effective, not these permanent funds are sacrosanct. I will go out on a limb and say that the permanent funds on net are negative because they protect the government from the vagaries of up and down revenue. They make government first at the table in terms of we've got to keep the money flowing into the government. They move the rest of us to the back of the table, and so they give, when government goes hungry for a little while, they start to get a little more efficient. They start to make sure that they have uh, a security blanket, and that security blanket generally in 99% of other states is the free market. It's a diversified economy. It's all the things that we talk about. In New Mexico, the permanent fund is their security blanket. They don't have to develop the economy because they know that as long as that money is there, they have enough money to spend. They can keep that money going.
Yeah, and we've talked many times about how Colorado has a limit on the growth of government because of their constitutional amendment, and notwithstanding the fact that left to its own devices in general, I have a feeling that Colorado is as progressive, if not more so, than New Mexico. But because they have to run state government based on the economy of Colorado and not some kind of magical, godlike outside force like the oil and gas industry is bringing money to the state, they don't do as many crazy things. Now, not saying they don't do any, but they economically have a little bit better track record than New Mexico, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, will the special session do anything at all to return any of this money to New Mexicans? No. Will we continue to grow government at least as long as this governor and this legislature, including their leadership, remains in place? Yes. Maybe they will cut something on the margins for the lowest income people, maybe refundable tax credits, but the idea of you might well be speaking in Swahili when you talk to Javier Martinez or Peter Worth or most of the Democrats up in Santa Fe about cutting taxes, developing the private sector. They simply do not comprehend the benefit or the necessity for that. So instead, uh, I expect that we'll have significant budget growth, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10% in Santa Fe in the upcoming 30-day session. I expect that we will have minimal to no tax reduction and even less what you would call pro-growth, business-oriented, across-the-board tax reduction. And unfortunately, it just is up to the voters. Do we want to change direction? Do we want to improve and move in a better way? And I'm not seeing it. We'll have to see in the next election. But yeah, to accumulate another $6 billion in the span of just over 7 months, it is astonishing, especially for a state the size of New Mexico. So
Yeah, and Paul, one final note is there's a lot of and the New York Times is just they're reading off of the talking points of the D's in general with regard to the big beautiful bill. Oh my
mhm,
goodness, the sky's falling.
mhm,
All of these people in New Mexico will do without. Well, the state can easily
absolutely.
replace that. Now the key is will they, or do they want that as like this political thing? So they're going to make quote, even if they believe that citizens will suffer, are they going to let them continue to suffer because it just doesn't suit them politically to solve the problem, at least as they've defined it? That's also the potential for just another level of hypocrisy, but that's something else that'll be interesting to see how that works out as well.
Well, I'll go through a few scenarios because I'm kind of looking at this a lot like the Albuquerque mayor's race. You've got various scenarios. All of them include a runoff election. Well, So you have one, which is you just pump money into New Mexico Medicaid version, replace the federal dollars with New Mexico dollars and do nothing else. That's,
Yeah, no work requirements, no
yeah,
cost cutting, just dump some money on it.
yeah, that is probably the most likely and probably the most harmful scenario. Obviously, uh, there are other scenarios that include some kind of New Mexification of Medicaid in some way, shape, or form. Because if I'm a state policymaker in the legislature, a Democrat, and I say, well, we're no longer using this as the economic development tool. We're using this to actually help, theoretically, New Mexicans attain healthcare coverage and maintain their health, which we just said Medicaid primarily has been expanded dramatically in terms of the amount of money it's pumped into New Mexico with little to no outcomes. That's from Source New Mexico. Again, not a conservative source. So, do they do something on the margins to try to improve the bang for the buck and the healthcare outcomes? I That's certainly not going to happen in a special session. Maybe an outside chance in the 30-day session. And do they do anything at all, uh, broadly speaking, economically to make New Mexico, to get people off of Medicaid, to improve the private sector economy, to incentivize people moving in a more positive direction? Because Medicaid it's a formula, and anytime you create a formula, it's ready for abuse. We've seen that at the state level, where New Mexico put the provider taxes in place to fleece the federal government, other taxpayers in other states out of something like $1.4 billion. Do they do something to kind of right size or make Medicaid work? I think the chances of that are slim to none, and we know where Slim went. So I don't know. We'll be watching that. I expect that what we'll get in the special session, because these cuts aren't even taking effect yet. The cuts won't even take effect until Medicaid cuts is what I'm talking about, won't take effect until well after Michelle Lujan Grisham has left office. So it's not like something staring us in the face, but the governor wants to be seen as someone who's proactive, et cetera, et cetera. And so I expect we may just, we're going to dump some money into the pot this year in this special session, and we'll see what happens in the 30. All right. As long as that conversation was, buckle up, because this one, one of the things that I like to do is find stories for our listeners and for those who read our Heirs of Enchantment blog, that fall through the cracks, that are left out of the traditional media outlets. And this is one that we haven't done. For a while, you could play the drinking game on this show, the tipping point drinking game, and EVs. You'd be having a few beverages at the end of a conversation, because EVs were a lot of what we were talking about. We haven't talked about EVs basically since Trump canned the California exemption, which ultimately limited New Mexico's ability to, through the governor, enforce an EV mandate on New Mexicans. And now we're kind of living in this world of relative vehicle freedom, with a lot of subsidies that still exist both on the federal and the state level. But I just happened to get curious the other day, and one of the reasons I wound up in this field, because I'm kind of curious that way about these different things that go on in the world. And I wondered what our friends at the Alliance for Automotive Innovation were seeing in terms of the first quarter. This is the most recent data available in terms of electric vehicle sales. I just thought, why not check it up? Lo and behold, quite the slap across the face. I was stunned. So basically, in the first quarter, so just to be clear, the first quarter of 2025, January, February, and March. So we're talking about the inauguration of President Trump in January, and the repeal of the California EV mandate or exemption didn't happen until May, and really wasn't discussed in a substantive way during the first 3 months. It kind of was one of those things we were waiting for. We were saying, "Well, is this going to happen? What's going to happen?" But during the first 3 months of 2025, EV sales across the nation and here in New Mexico absolutely plummeted. So this is directly from the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. All but 6 states lost EV market share in Q1 2025 versus Q4 2024. 23 states saw a market share decrease of a percentage point or more. Colorado lost the largest market share with a decrease of 7.2% quarter over quarter. Hawaii led all states quarter over quarter with an increase of 0.8%. Oregon's the only state which previously adopted California's EV mandate to increase market share, meaning that New Mexico and others saw a decline. So, fascinating stuff. Now, I want to get your take on this, Wally. So, there's still EV subsidies in place at the federal level, and I'll read a brief economic or environmental department email that I just got as I was writing this, which was fantastic. It contributed to it. But why do you think? Because I've been puzzling over this one in the back of my head since I wrote this post. Do you think it was just Trump gets elected, EVs aren't as sexy and hot as they were, or do you think people were reacting to something else? That's what I'm getting at right now, Wally. What do you think's going on here?
Well, I think much of the first quarter EV sales was the shift from Tesla's and Elon Musk is the greatest thing since sliced bread to now he's the Doge.
Okay.
And we're like, we can't have that. And so, it's interesting. It used to be that before, and Paul, I've seen this with my own small circle of friends, colleagues, and associates. It used to be somebody bought an EV, that would be your most liberal person or very liberal person Since Trump's been elected, that's kind of flipped. And the people who have bought EVs tend to be far more conservative. Again, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
making this into a statistically valid economic study, but I do think that there's some changes in the politics underlying EVs.
Hmm.
And so then we have that. So first quarter down. I have a feeling second
Okay.
quarter will be down as well. Paul, you heard it here first. The third quarter will jump up dramatically. And the reason for that is that tax credits are going away, and all the EV manufacturers are like, okay, if you buy a Tesla, and again, just using Tesla, if you buy a Tesla and take delivery before September 30th, it's $9,000 cheaper than if you get it on October 1st. And so I have a
Mm-hmm.
feeling that inventory will be down. There'll be a lot of sales. And I have a feeling the fourth quarter, who knows, it's going to be probably flat again. And then who has done their job on EVs and who hasn't? Well, there is a lot of things in place to encourage those. And to the point of draconian measures with California that New Mexico jumped along with. But what's maybe some of the biggest failures is government who had allocated billions of dollars for vehicle charging stations just didn't do its job. They
Mm-hmm.
just flat out didn't do it. And so now we're left at the fourth quarter of 2025 back to a relatively free market. What is the cost benefit of having an EV? We're not pushing you. We've lost the ability to require you to buy one. And we will see. And again, the politics has changed on who necessarily would be interested in an electric vehicle, in my opinion.
Well, I had not even contemplated the Elon Musk factor, but that is interesting. So a lot your hypothesis, if you
Yes.
will, is that because of Elon Musk's involvement with the Trump administration, that Tesla lost considerable market share, and they didn't lose it to other EV manufacturers or EV purchases. they lost it to traditional, or maybe they just lost sales, period. There was no sales made because of Elon Musk joining in the Trump administration.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So, well,
Fascinating. Hey,
yeah,
that's
and it's one of those. And the reason, a way to encapsulate why I
mhm.
think that is, I am actually quite a fan of memes.
Okay.
And the meme was, when Teslas were being vandalized by
Hmm.
those on the left in protest for what Elon Musk and Doge and the Trump administration was doing, is like, isn't it ironic that Trump and Elon Musk have gotten progressives to now destroy electric vehicles? Now, that are probably owned by other progressives, by the way, but it's just very weird. It's like, things get very politicized in our country, and I think the EVs are definitely one that's the case. So,
Okay. Well, here is a little bit of additional information. So this is from the email that I received from New Mexico's Environment Department, detailing a few of the subsidies that are still around. So that you know, it was so, and your hypothesis does lend a lot of support to the way things actually happen. Because if you're worried about a future mandate, you're probably more likely saying that you need to buy an EV. You're probably more likely to run out and buy a gas powered vehicle before the mandate kicks in. But uh, that's not really what happened, or it doesn't seem to have happened. So here's this email. Under current federal policy, tax credits of up to $7,500 for new EVs and up to $4,000 for used EVs are only available through September 30th, 2025. So if you're a smart listener to this show who wants to buy an EV, check that, keep that in mind. September 30th, 2025. So, a month and a few days. So then need a charger too. You can also get a tax credit of up to $1,000 to cover the cost of purchasing and installing a residential or commercial EV charging station. That time is limited as well. The federal tax credit is available through June 30th, 2026, but close to a year there, significantly more time. And then, of course, the state level, New Mexico's government offers a tax credit of up to $3,000 for the purchase of a new or used qualifying vehicle, and a tax credit up to $25,000 for purchase and installation of clean car charging units. So you can get those credits at the state level, and I'm sure those are not going anywhere. I'm also sure that the EV subsidies at the federal level are not coming back. So it's it will be interesting to watch how the market for EVs ebbs and flows here now that we are squeezing some of these subsidies and certainly the mandates out of the equation. And that's why I have you on the show for these deep insights, like it was an anti-Elon upsurge that caused the decline in EV sales. And I just can't wait till the second quarter numbers come out, because I think that'll be fascinating. But um, you have to agree with me, Wally, that this is a story that, if our media did not have their heads firmly implanted in their colons, that we would have a much, this would be a news story. This would be something of interest, because it's so significant of a shift in the EV market.
oh, without question, Paul. Just and think back to COVID, and everybody wanted an EV. There wasn't supply coming out of that. The politics of inevitability had kicked in. It's everyone's going to have an
Hmm.
EV. The governor says we can require it because everyone's going to want them, and that's the way it's going to go anyway. And then, yeah, to have this flip and go so far back in the other direction so quickly, you know, uh,
And I believe it does call into question the long-term viability of EVs as a, not replacement for, but even as a supplement for, what is the viability of electric vehicles now? Now that the market is not just seemingly topped off, but potentially is in decline. Now,
Yeah.
time will tell what exactly happens, but maybe we've kind of hit a wall here where 5 or 6% of the market is electric, and that's the way it's going to be. I just can't even even if AOC is elected 3.5 years from now, whatever. Uh, it is impossible for her to make a case. Oh, EVs are the next big thing. People want EVs. I mean, yeah, you can come in and mandate them if you really want to, but boy, you're not going to be able to tell yourself or anybody else the story that yeah, EVs that's the big thing now.
Well, and then the car manufacturers, both in Europe and the US, are definitely recalibrating their
Yeah,
EV strategies because they're like, okay, this is not turning out how we were told by our political
yeah.
forces it's going to happen. And so just remember back when the Ford Lightning F-150 was everything. And then they're
Hmm.
like, well, we have the Ford in an EV, we have it in a hybrid, and we have it in a gas. And now, do you even hear about the EV? They don't
Yeah.
really talk about it much because again, the demand is very slack.
All righty. Well, that was fun. That was a great conversation, if I may say so myself. Pew Center on the states. Uh, Alex Horowitz, director of their Housing Policy Initiative, recently did a presentation, a virtual presentation, I'm told, to the legislature and had some harsh things to say about New Mexico's housing policy. I start off this blog post with the New Mexico is a land of crises. Perhaps that should be the new motto. New Mexico, the land of crises. Uh, I think it makes sense. What does this guy have to say? Well, it was written up in the Santa Fe New Mexican, and here are a few choice quotes. According to this gentleman, Mr. Horowitz, New Mexico is alone among states in the region in its failure to reduce restrictions on new housing construction in recent years. This has contributed significantly to skyrocketing housing costs in New Mexico. Horowitz cited numerous building code reforms and bills designed to streamline permitting that have been adopted by lawmakers in Colorado, California, Arizona, Texas. Notice those are two blue states, fairly significantly blue, and two red states. Other states throughout the nation over the past several years. In those states, changes have helped increase their inventory of housing, resulting in lower rent growth or even rent reductions in some major cities. Meanwhile, the increase in median monthly rent in New Mexico and Santa Fe has far outpaced the national rate. Median cost of a new home in the state has soared, and housing inventory has plummeted. Now, it would be one thing if New Mexico was a fast growing, booming state right now, but we all know that ain't the case. Uh, so, why is our housing stock price going up so much? Well, part of it's because we have so little new supply coming online. And yeah, housing remains an issue in many, many states, but uh, this gentleman obviously has some pretty strong opinions as to what is happening or should be happening in the state of New Mexico and why that's creating problems. Wally?
Well, I think there's a number of factors. So in the Albuquerque in particular is landlocked in pretty severely on three sides, and the other side between Rio Rancho and the Atrisco land grant has its own problems with regard to getting land. But let's look at what you have to do to be able to house in Albuquerque. You have impact fees that a lot of places don't have. You have requirements for electric vehicle charging
Mm-hmm.
stations, which a lot of places don't have. You have a permitting process that, uh, and I'm just told this by friends of mine who are subcontractors. I've heard it from builders, but my the folks I know are subcontractors saying, "Oh my goodness, the permitting and the slowness and that process is really broken in the city of Albuquerque. They hate doing business here." And so, guess what? If each one of those adds, 5, 10, $15,000. Pretty soon you're up to 20, 30, $40,000 more cost for a new home that you wouldn't have building at other places. And as we've said, incomes are not stellar in New Mexico. And so, if you could maybe afford a $350,000 house, but the house is now $425 or $450,000, it can't be affordable. But it's tough to get government then to take a look at what some of those underlying factors are in our state. And as a result, we don't have a lot of houses being built. And Paul, the ones that aren't being built in places like Rio Rancho, I've been out there. They, quote unquote, Rio Rancho, come here because everything is less expensive. The new houses that are being built out there,
Mm-mm.
from a New Mexico point of view, it's hard to categorize those as low cost.
No, I agree with you 100%. And Rio Rancho, and I know we had Greg Hull, the mayor, on recently. Just in my personal opinion, driving around Rio Rancho, they remain saddled with serious issues in terms of infrastructure. And I'm sure the water, I'm sure the sidewalks and other things are an issue, but that city continues to grow and expand without any significant high-speed roads. They're even 528 and 550, which both kind of bisect or go through Rio Rancho. The Paseo del Volcan is a pretty high-speed road, but it kind of doesn't go anywhere you need to go at any given time. So it's they
Well, and
need to.
Rio Rancho, between what they call their city center,
Mm-hmm.
which is way out in the middle of nowhere, and Paseo del Volcan, those are both infrastructure of the future, meaning
Yep.
that's not where most of the action is really happening. So I concur with you on that, Paul.
No doubts. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to cite, and I did cite in my original post, uh, the information about some of those policies that we have in New Mexico with the permitting, the gross receipts tax, et cetera, and the EV charging stations, et cetera. So, yeah, we're not exactly moving in the correct direction. And it's good to see Pew telling them what's going on at the legislative level. New report from the Arrowhead Center at New Mexico State University claims that there was a $240 million economic impact from the facility in 2024. Now, economic impact is like looking for penumbras in the U.S. Constitution. It's really in the eye of the beholder. I actually reached out. You remember we had a gentleman named Chris Erickson on the show a while back. He's one of the co-authors of this report and did not respond to my email. I do not put much stock in terms like economic impact because what that actually means is very much up in the air. Spending, tax revenues, direct jobs created are at least tangible and can be clearly measured. Economic impact is pretty much impossible to define. And our friends at the John Locke Foundation in North Carolina have a report that they look at economic impact, and they note 5 things. The numbers typically do not consider opportunity costs or alternative uses for the resources at play. There's no cost-benefit analysis. No information is conveyed about the efficient use of resources. Most of what is measured are economic costs, not benefits, and negative multiplier effects are ignored. So these are some good critiques of economic impact data. I'll just say that it's we did this for years with New Mexico's film industry. Well, the economic impact is this, that, or the other. It's like, what does that actually mean? Well, we know that it means in New Mexico with regard to the film industry that we're losing money. And I believe the same is the case for Spaceport America.
Well, Paul, I go back to the very first presentation I heard at ACI, Association of Commerce and
Ooh, that's
Industry,
a different name for it.
a
That's so,
long,
yeah,
long,
yeah.
long time ago. And when I saw that presentation, I got a sick feeling to my stomach. And the reason I did was they were blending space tourism and scientific and other commercial space activities into one thing, which to use a metaphor from a sitcom, that sort of was the tan and wash kind of
Hmm.
strategy. Two very disparate businesses, and if you look at the economic impact, they do the way that's played out. They talk about vertical versus
Hmm.
horizontal launches. Well, the horizontal, they're not happening because
Hmm.
that's the Virgin Galactic. The vertical are happening. So right now you have to think there's only really two sources of economic impact. People that are working on vertical, the scientific kind of technological types of launches, and anybody that's a hanger on as Virgin Galactic struggles to keep from going out of business. So those are kind of the two things. And the thing that struck me was you don't need a terminal for vertical launches. You know what I mean? You need some sort of a control building, but you don't need this you know beautiful as it is, quote, spaceport that's this giant port building. So, yeah, and I'm with you about the economic impact. There's a lot of them use the M plan
Hmm. That's
software,
what they
which
used.
is, Paul, I've used that before, and it comes up with numbers, and you license it, and it's a lot like going to see the Wizard of Oz, and don't look behind the curtain, and it'll give you a number, and you can publish it and feel good about yourself. So, yeah, and the points you raise are valid. Not that there isn't an economic impact, but again, is there a cost benefit? Has the state thrown money after something that's a big loser, and we're just seeing the end of that? Or can it switch to the fact that that could be a good place long term to do vertical launches, but this tourism thing might have passed New Mexico by?
And as a quick aside on that, we're we were told when Virgin Galactic stopped flying its initial craft and went back to the drawing board to build something that could be launched more frequently and profitably, that they were going to launch in 2025. Quick, uh, sorry to spoil this, but they ain't going to launch in 2025.
Quick update on the news of this. There is no news. So if there's
Yes,
no news, that must mean
they claim
they've been
now
struggling.
sometime during 2026, within 12 to 18 months, which in my estimation means that the earliest we can expect Virgin Galactic to launch again from Spaceport America is probably August of 2027. That would be my the Paul guessing estimate based on their previous statements. Final thing, uh, as you know, Wally, and others who have listened to this show have perhaps found out, we have sat down with a number of the candidates for mayor on this show, and we've also surveyed them. So you can go in one place at riograndefoundation.org and find my conversation and the candidate survey of Mei-Ling Armijo, Daniel Chavez, Eddie Varela, and Darren White as we talked to him last week. What you do not see is Tim Keller, Luis Sanchez, and Alexander Ubaez. None of them responded, unfortunately. So they don't not only did not come on the show, they did not fill out the candidate survey. So we know municipal elections here in the city of Albuquerque are coming up soon. I want you as a voter to be informed and to get out and vote and check that information out. Please share it with your friends, family members, anyone living in the city of Albuquerque. We want to make turnout high, not just during the general election, but during the runoff, presuming it happens. And, we want people to be informed. So, with that, thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.